it doesn't require a lot of your time. We've got openings for volunteer positions that are as little as 30 minutes a month. And it's just basically to help us move the chapter along, get things accomplished, and get you exposure in rubbing elbows with some of our other members in a networking capacity. So I hope you'll consider that. Next up, I'd like to introduce you. I'm going to hand the screen over to our presenter today. This is Dr. Dean Kashiwagi with Kashiwagi Solution Model.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is going to be an interesting and innovative type presentation. And in order to make sure that everybody's tracking along, especially doing this virtually, I'm going to ask you to use your chat boxes. So when I ask you a question, if the response is a positive, I want you to say yes. And if the response is a negative, I want you to say no in your chat box. And that way I will have a good feel of who's following with the presentation, because it does use some new terminology. We are talking about innovation. I'm glad to be here. So happy that we had enough sponsors to put this on, because I really feel that this is an important topic. Well, to start off, I'd like to introduce something that you might have heard a little bit about. How many of you have heard about blockchain and Bitcoin? If you have, give me a yes on your website. Okay, what this is, and it's quite interesting, it really is a ledger, an electronic ledger that is unregulated. In other words, somebody creates this ledger, and as people start using this ledger, or it's merely tracking financial information mainly, and they start using this, basically they can trade now on it, or they can pass information. And Bitcoin is basically an application using blockchain. And the origin of blockchain was off the dark web. In other words, people who wanted to do transactions that they didn't want to let anybody know about, they would use the coins. And that's how Bitcoin got going. Is if you're doing something illegal and you didn't want anybody tracking you, or you didn't want to pay taxes on it, or you didn't want anyone auditing you, basically the coin becomes, quote, the money that's moving back and forth. And so as soon as you participate in this and become a party, you have access to the full ledger. Now this ledger, so basically is a financial platform. And if you're dealing in this in some way, you get the entire ledger. And the ledger is made up of blocks of information. So then the first block has information. When somebody wants to add more information, it's tied into the second block, and that's why it's called blockchain or blockchaining. And the trick behind this is that every user has the entire set of information. So let's say we've had 100 transactions in this group, this private group. Everyone has all 100 transactions. Now, what makes this possible, because evidently, this is not as efficient as if somebody had a controlled spreadsheet or database and they just gave people access to it. This is actually every single individual who's participating in this has the entire blockchain, so that when somebody makes a change, this change is quickly sent out to everyone who's participating. In order to change anything on this, you have to get a majority agreeing with you that the change has to happen. And really what this becomes is a historical record of everything that's going on. So now, what is the advantage of it? Well, first of all, the only reason that somebody started using this type of philosophy is because of the technology. The faster processing speeds, the ability to move large amounts of information made this feasible. And the way it helps everyone is in each participant now, you're using the common ledger as all your information. So you don't have to keep the information yourself. It's on the ledger. And because everyone sees the ledger, and the ledger is, quote, unhackable, because if you have 100 participants, in order to change anything or get into this, to do anything, you have to have approval of over 50 of the participants. So then, if you don't need now to pass the information, then no one needs to have a lawyer, no one needs to have an accountant, no one needs to have their own documentation and any records, because it's all on the ledger. What makes this possible is the higher processing speeds and the ability to move a large amount of information. Because in doing blockchain, it's definitely not going to be faster than if somebody was running off a spreadsheet and everybody had access to that spreadsheet or database, right? So it's a little slower. But why is it good? Because it doesn't have any regulation on it. No one needs any permission. And in order to be a participant, the amount of information you need to be a participant is minimal. So basically, no one can track anybody else unless you knew exactly who they were and what the transactions are. So therefore, they're using this in a way that it's not trackable. It's decentralized. And so basically now it's going to be slower, right? And I hope I got this sheet right. Yeah. Because if you want to have centralized control, you don't need this blockchain idea. But this blockchain idea gives total security because of the way it's set up by the originator. And then the number of coins is set. So nobody can change that. And so the coins, now in the Bitcoin system, the coins increase in value if somebody wants to do more of this. And so basically it has caught the eye of people on the stock market, because blockchain and Bitcoin, the stocks have increased tremendously in value. Not regulated, you can go anywhere in the world. Nobody knows what you're doing. Nobody can stop you. It's like a totally free economy. Well, there's some people who are not going to like this. Like the big four accounting firms. Do you think they're going to like this? No. How about the banks? Do you think they actually like this going on? When somebody actually has created a new form of currency, and that's why they call it cryptocurrency, right? Because it's a new form of currency that no one has any control over. It's, you got something I want, I know who you are, I transfer you coins. And if I wanted to buy more of what you have, I have to buy more coins and then pay you in the coins. It's quite an innovative technique. But the thing I like about it, that what it's showing is, if everybody's on the same ledger, then the lawyers, the accountants, the duplication and documentation, the decision-making goes away. It becomes a totally transparent system. And when you have transparency, it minimizes the cost. Now, once again, blockchain is slower than somebody controlling this in a centralized location. But the key is, because it's unregulated, people can do whatever they want. And so there's no regulation, there's no governance over this system. The governance is already in the structure of it. And this is where I believe the future is going to go if it can overcome certain hurdles. Because the lawyer firms, the accountants, right, the third-party checkers, they're not going to like this. But this is the future because of the technology. And during the pandemic, it's actually pushed this technology further and faster. It's here. So I want to concentrate now on the common ledger idea, which creates transparency to minimize human participation. It's the concept of automation, and it's here to stay. Well, automation means minimization of human task, which means the supply chain now, as far as all the people in it and the length of it, is shortened. Now, how does this change the FM professional's job? So we're going to look at the FM professional first, and then we're going to look at the FM associate and see downstream on what's going to happen to both these roles. Well, the first thing is obvious. The FM professional, and a lot of people have been saying this, has to become part of the C-suite. The people who hold the money. The people who hold the governance of information. And the FM associates, there's no doubt about it, with the speed of technology and how quickly new requirements are coming up and how we have to act on these new requirements, they have to become the technical experts. So what am I saying here? I'm saying the FM professional can no longer be the technical expert. The FM professional, in some way, has to add tremendous value to maintain their role. The FM associate has to be the expert. Now, what is this expert, and why is this expert so important? I'm going to use my hands, and some of you may have seen me do this before. If this is the owner, the client, and this is the vendor, the way business is normally done is the client has been the expert. And being the expert, they tell the vendors what to do. Well, as things change, how can they get all the technical expertise? They can't. This role is dead. They now have to depend on expert vendors. Well, which means they can't be doing this anymore, which means the whole way we procure expertise has to change. The secret comes in looking at a smaller group in a single organization where the boss is doing this. No one likes this. The question is, if the boss doesn't do that, should the workers pass information to the boss? Those of you who think yes, put yes in the chat box. Should the workers do this to their boss? Pass information. Okay, now, this is when we all have to get together now and really think about this. For those of you who are executives or bosses, right? If people continually pass you technical information, do you have to think more or think less? How can you tell? Your stress level should rise. For those of you who agree with me, put a yes in a chat box that the boss's stress level will go up because of all this technical information. Now, Is this a good thing? I propose to you, no. If the boss's stress level goes up, sooner or later, he's going to have to cut the flow of information off. He's going to have to try to get all the information together. Then he's going to have to make a decision. And once he makes a decision, he's going to have to tell everyone what to do. Everybody quickly identified that this was not an optimal thing. Nobody likes to work for a micromanager. However, the majority of people who work in organizations love to pass information to their boss, not knowing that the natural law says when you do this as a worker, passing technical information, the boss is going to have to cut it off, think about the information, make a decision, and tell everybody else what to do. How many of you agree with this? Say yes in your chat box. Okay, the majority of you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, just hang along here and you'll quickly see what I'm getting at. Now, instead of looking at a single organization, let's look at the supply chain. Let's say I'm an owner. I'm a facility manager. I represent the owner, and I have an expert vendor. Should the expert vendor pass technical information, quote, to the FM? For those of you who say yes, yes in a chat box. Okay, let me step back. Remember this, and we all kind of agreed, most of us, that this was not a good thing to do because this is going to do nothing but make our boss go crazy and increase his stress level and force him to think and then result in this. This is actually no different than this. This still forces that side to increase their thinking, increase their stress level, try to learn it all, and then make a decision so that they can go now tell the vendor, this is really what we want, or we agree with this. This is no different than this. Now, here comes the kicker. If we have two expert vendors and they're working on a project, right? They're expert at what they do. They have the latest information. And we have two non-expert parties working together. Which ones? The expert or the non-expert? So if you think the experts are going to do this more, put yes in your chat box. If you say, no, they're not going to do it more, it's the non-experts, put a no in your chat box. Most of you got it. The people who don't know will do more of this. So what am I proposing to you? I'm proposing to you that whether it's this as an FM professional or the owner or the boss or the workers who are the experts working for the boss or the expert vendor doing this, which is going to lead to this, or the expert and the non-expert, or the facility manager professional and the vendor doing this, that all of it is not optimal. It's how we did work in the past. But it has to stop if we're to save the role of the FM professional. Because if the FM professional needs to get into the C-suite, and he starts talking any technical information, everybody else who's there, the CEO, the financial guy, the information guy, is just going to do this. All they want is lower cost and higher value. That's all they want. They want it in non-technical terms. The only way the FM professional, and if you've watched FMs, right, the professionals, you've seen like they're working harder, they're trying to learn more. People are saying we need to educate them even more. This is not efficient. This is not going to help them save their role. This is only going to get them to get put under somebody now who doesn't know anything about FM. And this is happening. So now we can have real estate people and they're over FM. Does this mean that the real estate people have more knowledge of FM than the FM people? The answer is no. But because the FMs haven't seen the writing on the wall, because they haven't figured it out, if you haven't figured this type of thing out, then you're going to be listening to somebody who knows less about FM. And you're going to be pushed as an FM professional further down. And this is what's going on in the FM community. Now, I know this is not the message that maybe most of the FM community wants to hear, but it's what's going on. And it's because of the impact of, quote, the worldwide marketplace. The pandemic has forced people now to think totally different. And now basically it's pushing it where we have to be more efficient. We have to create more value, which means if the FM professional is to survive, they have to have more responsibility, but less work. There is no other way to look at this. They have to have a system that allows them to know almost everything without knowing anything. And this technology has been tested out for the last 25 years. They have to show dominant value. The FM associates, they have to become the experts. When I say the experts, I mean the technical experts. They have to know their stuff. And not everyone is capable of being a technical expert. They have to provide transparency by using non-technical numbers that quickly go to the FM professional who relays it to the others in the C-suite. Wow, this is a change. But if this doesn't happen, then what you're talking about, you're taking the FM professional and you're saying, well, we'll continue on until somebody figures out that we don't need the FM professional in the role he's in, and everyone will be working for someone else who doesn't have that FM technical knowledge. They'll come from outside. Therefore, the FM professional will have to have greater responsibility and less work and less risk because they know how to identify and utilize expertise. And this is what automation is all about. Automation is that the human cognitive functions, which used to be our bread and butter, we can think, we can prioritize, we can go get more new information, we can make it work, we can make it optimal. The day of doing this and having value for a, quote, an FM professional is over. Because the automation which uses AI, and AI is nothing more than the brains of automation, can actually take over the human cognitive processing. And it can identify and utilize expertise much better than somebody who is a technical expert at something. How will it increase the efficiency and value of FM services? You'll look at everything we do and it'll optimize. No more duplication. No more telling an expert what to do. Then why do I need an expert? Does the expert need to tell the FM professional what to do? No. Because the FM now can identify and utilize expertise in a way that's quick, that doesn't force them to think and make decisions. It doesn't require them anymore to manage, direct, and control. It's a totally new world. Some people think this is disruptive. In a way, it is. It's disruptive in the sense that some people feel like the way they currently work in the environment has to change. And yes, you will have to change in order to become very successful in the future. So what's an expert? Well, everybody says a vendor's an expert. No, not necessarily. Even in a vendor's organization, the number of experts are very limited. Experts can know the difference. In other words, if I was somebody who didn't know anything, an expert could tell me how my situation is different from everybody else's situation, how the initial conditions of where I am are going to change to some future conditions, and the conditions are going to be different. They can tell the difference. Even in their own company, they can tell the ones who can understand, who can tell the difference, and the ones who can't. Now, once you can tell the difference, you can see into the future. Why? Because by observation, if you can tell the difference, you can see into the future. For example, this is my favorite bottle test. If I tell everybody that I'm going to run 100 tests of releasing this bottle, if you're an expert at the law of gravity, do you have to think about what's going to happen when I release this bottle? Chat box, yes or no? Do you have to think about this? You don't. By observation, because of your expertise in the law of gravity, you realize that even before I run the 100 tests, when I start releasing the bottle, every time it's going to fall. You are an expert. An expert not only can tell the difference between what the initial conditions and the final conditions will be, because they know that, they can actually see into the future. So they know, based on looking at the initial conditions, what they have to do and what the final conditions will be. Now, there's one more thing that experts can do. And a lot of people don't realize this. An expert, when they can see into the future, quickly looks at other stakeholders that they have to deal with. Realize that the stakeholders normally do not have their expertise. So the expert realizes if they don't make it super simple, that they're wasting their time, because the people won't understand. The people will start thinking. The people will start making decisions. And then they start telling the expert what to do. An expert knows this. So an expert makes it super simple. Now, how do they make it simple? An expert realizes the simplest of all communications is metrics. In other words, I'm holding one bottle of water. That's a metric. It's an observable metric because everybody can see this. Now, let me ask another question. Is this a transparent bottle? Ah, that is not a good question and not a good metric to keep, simply because people disagree on this. One guy will go, yeah, I can still see through that. It's transparent. And the other guy will go, that's not transparent. I can't see through it. Any metric that causes disagreement should not be used because it's not easily observable. Now, the other requirement for a metric is it has to be countable. In other words, if I can't, quote, convince everybody that I'm holding 1 bottle of water, then that's not a good metric. Why? Because it makes people think. And when you make people think, people's stress level goes. When their stress level goes up, they're going to have to make a decision because they don't understand. Thinking, decision-making are not optimal things in the supply chain. Passing more information, more technical information, that's not a good thing anymore. That's going to cause people to think. Making people think, you have to take that off your, quote, repertoire of what you do. Now, that's a change in paradigm. But let's go on here. If experts can do this, if the professional FMs can quickly identify who is the expert, what is the best price, they don't have to go on low bid. They don't have to tell everybody what the conditions are so they can go low bid. They don't have to assume that everybody's the same. By natural law, it will work on its own. What is automation? Automation always makes experts greater. Do experts, when they have successful automation, do they have to think more or think less in doing their job? More is yes. Hit your chat boxes. Do experts using successful automation have to think more or think less? Okay, I'm going to review this one more time. An expert, do they have to think about this? Yes or no? Therefore, an expert has to think what? Less. See if that's the way I can find a non-expert immediately. Is if they're thinking more, they're giving me longer answers, they're now making it simple, and they're making me think. This is the technology in the information age. You have to understand this and how it works. All technology, all automation, any helps to experts always reduces the thinking, reduces the risk. Everything we do is headed this direction. Yes, that guy closest to us, right? He's thinking more, and he wants $15 an hour. He's not going to get it. He's going to be replaced. If you travel, it used to be taxis. Now it's lifts. The next stage is going to be what? Automated cars. I recently went into LA. Went to my friend's place, needed to get back to the airport, called Lyft, told them where I was and where I needed to go. This fellow picks us up. If you look at, quote, right in front of his dash, he has all the information he needs to know. Where he goes, what's the speed, what's his speed, and he has the cameras going inside and outside. After we got out of the car, I asked my wife, what language was he speaking? And my wife says, I don't know. And I said, you don't know because he never spoke. Oh, I'm sorry. He said, thank you. That's it. What happened to all the this that was going on? And by degrees, the automation will take it over. And one day he may not have a job. And it's driven by the need for a lower cost, more efficiency. Everything is going to go this way. Things that we thought were high risk. Automation and artificial intelligence is going to target these jobs faster, and they see this as the quote marketplace for automation. The white collar jobs, not the blue collar jobs. This is what's amazing. Yeah, we used to think automation, oh, we're going to compete automation with like manual labor. This is far gone. Everyone's using automation. Anything, quote, that had improved production and quality is going this way. Think about what's going on. You don't see any humans here. This car is going down the assembly line. Who's doing the pre-planning? Who's prioritizing the task? Who's watching the timing of each task? And who's watching the deviation of the performance of each robot? It's all done automatically. I love this video. The reason why I like it so much is because it shows the movement of automation. And it shows what's being automated and what's not being automated. Because the guy in the back who's the finisher, why is he still needed? It's because it's too expensive to put him into the machine. Now, do you think we're going to have, as these things take over, we're going to have more jobs for these finishers or less jobs? Give me a more or less in your chat box. Absolutely. Absolutely. And do you think we're going to have higher quality people doing this work or lower quality people? Okay, guys, you're not getting the answers right. The people who are hired to work with the robot have to be faster, have to have better quality, can't be messing up the work. So these people's value is going to go up. The jobs are going to go down. The quality is going to go up. This is the natural law. You can't have a guy mucking up on here. They're going to have to stop the robot and go back and redo the work. This identifies expertise. It's the people who can't be automated and the people who have great quality work, but there are going to be less of these jobs. If you think things can't be automated, who's doing the automation? We got college kids who need projects for automation, who do like automating a chef. Tremendous quality. Anything that requires memory, anything that requires remembering what people order, who they are, the computer can do it just like that. Their name, what they have, and it can make it more efficient. And even though everybody's saying, well, we don't want this going on because the number of jobs are going to go down, I guarantee you, if you watch these videos, these people are tickled pink with the product they're getting. Did this come up all of a sudden? No. 20 years ago, somebody was saying, let's take a procurement person. What value does a 20-year procurement person have? Let's test this out. We have a lot of data. We can create these tests. Let's take the information, and because we don't have a lot of funding here, let's cut down the amount of information that's going to go into the computer model. Let's make it simple. And at the same time, let's go ahead and get another benchmark. Like, how about if somebody knew nothing? College freshman. And let's create the tests. Have them all take the tests. What were the results? Perfect score is 0. The computer won. The students who knew nothing did much better than the 20-year experienced professional procurement people. Then they found out the thinking, the decision-making, using all this information didn't bring much. Now, what did they do with the results? If you look at the bottom here, what's the date of this test? We're looking at 2003 was the documentation. So we're looking at, this thing was probably done about the year 2000, which is 20 years ago. If you saw this 20 years ago, what would you do? Well, what they did was they hid it. Why? Because nobody wanted to hear this. Everybody wanted to increase their professionalism. Everybody wanted to become more powerful because they can tell people the thinking and decision-making is what brings my value. Well, today, automation, the drive to automate, the drive to cut cost, it can't be stopped. So all the things that FM professionals were doing, the thinking, decision, we want to, quote, minimize that and maximize what? Observation, which means minimize thinking, minimize decision-making, make it simple, make it transparent, and identify and utilize expertise. Wow. What does it mean to identify and utilize expertise? It means the FM professional, once they get an expert vendor, who does all the thinking and decision-making if it needs to be done? It's the expert. Why? Because they have more knowledge. They know how to do it. Well, you know, I've been around like for 25 years, and there were some professionals who thought, we're at this level, and the vendors are at this level. So the leadership people have to be these people. The vendors are down here. Over 25 years. In fact, some of the professionals are no longer there. Or they're listening to somebody telling them what to do who doesn't know anything about FM. Wow. We can't sit around and keep talking with everyone because there are some people who can't see. And they have their own agenda. And their own agenda is, I'm going to make sure that my role stays there. They're not visionary. They're not a true expert. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. What's going on will go on. Automation will take the role over. Why? Because non-experts see the experts and fear the experts. I can't begin to tell you, when I walk around at Worldwide IFMA, I know there's some people, when they see me, they go the other way. They think I'm like the plague. I am not the pandemic. My name is not COVID-19. I can actually see. And what I see is we're going to have to create an environment where, quote, the experts can fly, where they can see into the future, tell the difference, make everything simple, minimize communication, and use metrics that the professional now can get in the C-suite and say, I saved 30% of the cost. And the performance, everybody's happy. The value, we can do more. And I can do even more. You have other problems, bring them to me. I can solve any problem because I'm not going to tell them this, but as a professional, I don't need any technical knowledge of anything that the owner needs, because I'm going to identify and utilize expertise, even though I don't have that expertise. My expertise is to learn how to identify and utilize expertise. And I'm going to do it by a simple approach of using metrics. Because I now know that there's things in nature that have to go by natural law, which can never be taught. I used to think when I was a little kid, the porpoise cannot jump 20 feet out in the open ocean. It needs a trainer to dangle a fish at 20 feet. Now, with all our, quote, access to information, our video capability, our camera technology, we have seen what animals can actually do. And they do not need a trainer to learn how to jump 20 feet. We do not need to tell the expert how to do their business. But then somebody may ask, do we have enough experts? And the answer is, I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've gone into every section of the United States, including places where the FM professional thought there was no talent and no expertise at all. And I've never found that an expert couldn't be found and utilized, with amazing results. Yes, most people are not thinking like this. An expert has the power of observation. They minimize their thinking, the decision making. They're just looking for an expert if they don't have the expertise. The majority of people do not think like this. Even in a vendor's company, they do not think like this. And that is why we need automation to help. Because when we use automation, we totally change the environment. We can help the vendor identify the expertise in his company, and the vendor will realize that not everybody's an expert in his company, and the vendor can actually do more if identified and utilized for their expertise, and letting other people do everything else that has to be done in the vendor's company. This is a whole new approach. It says the key to making FM services successful is the vendor has to be able to identify and utilize expertise. How do they do it? Some people do it naturally. They have to become an information worker. Remember, they can tell the difference, they can see into the future, and they know how to make it simple. And they're going to use automation to help them find the expert. The only reason why this is feasible is because it takes one expert who can do the work of 10. It's the only reason why we even toy with this solution and approach. It's because one person now who is the expert can actually do 10 times the amount of responsibility. Which means on the professional side, they're going to do quality assurance. They're going to be able to learn how to identify and utilize expertise. And on the vendor side, they're going to have to be the expert, which means they're going to have to identify and utilize the expert in their company differently. Now, how do we do this? Simple. If I'm the client and I needed an ERP system, which is a financial platform, all I need to pass to a real expert is, what is my budget? How many employees will have to be serviced? How many transactions do we do a month? How many existing software systems that they have to interface with because we can't get rid of them? And how many departments are going to be utilizing this ERP system? If I don't have any other information, this is all I give them. Anytime people disagree with some of the information, we take it out. An expert will look at this and say, I've done this type of job, with this type of constraints, servicing close to this number of people 2 times. And, quote, time deviation, cost deviation, customer satisfaction, total 10s. No deviations. I have now found an expert who is going to lay out exactly what has to be done, both in a total detailed schedule, time and costs, and a modified schedule, which, quote, is used to mitigate risk. And risk is caused by people who don't understand what the expert has to do. And the chief objective of the expert is to make it so simple that it identifies what risk will occur before it occurs. And they will use their expertise to mitigate risk, not to sign for risk, not to share risk, but to mitigate risk. Yeah, we now know AI is targeting anybody whose expertise, quote, can be laid out in a simple equation, process, etc. They're targeting these areas. It's the white-collar jobs. We have an approach that the non-observant now, it's made so simple that they follow this approach, and that's all they do. They don't have to think. They don't have to make decisions. At the end, we have proven they'll be totally happy and satisfied. This is the future of the FM. The FM professional has to be able to identify and utilize expertise out of a wide range of vendors, has to be able to communicate in simple metrics, and the FM associates have to become the technical expertise, have to be able to lay the work out. They have to be able to identify experts in their own company. We have moved now from Arizona State University. You can see my ASU shirt. I still have some loyalties, but we have moved out of engineering, moved into project management, and we're developing all these concepts on the fly. What I'd like to offer everyone is, besides getting updated books, every IFMA chapter we put a presentation on for, and we just got a request today. We will actually deliver any service for you free of charge, as long as you agree to keep the whole thing transparent. So at the end, without using any names, or so people can find out who did it, or who the vendor was, or who the client was, we'll run the whole thing from beginning to end. And you will see that you can save tremendous costs. You can add value. You can make it simple. So when you go to the C-suite, they can easily understand, what, you save 30% of the cost? And we got better service? Oh my goodness. This is our offer to any chapter that we give a presentation to. Now, we have come to the end. I've gone over time, but we might have a couple minutes for Q&A, and we can answer any questions here. So far away, I don't know who's going to, quote, do the Q&A session. You will get these slides, and I will be here for a couple minutes now and answer any question that you might have. I mean, no question is a stupid question. We're talking about a change in paradigm here. So relax and start asking me questions.
You guys can just type in your questions in the actual chat, and we'll relay them to Dr. Dean.
I can actually see the chat box here. I'm surprised.
And I'm here to moderate as well.
Okay.
Come on, guys, ask those questions. They may be
simple question.
They may be typing
Okay.
right now. Here you go. Here's one from Jerry Elders. Do you teach classes regarding currently that the FMs can take to help us move forward?
You know, I have volunteered to give classes on this at Worldwide IFMA. But I guess I was before my time. And they didn't get enough signups. But we actually have other presentations that we can give. And if you get on, quote, our website, or if you get the book or get on YouTube, you can find some of this. But we have made it so simple now. The best way is for somebody to volunteer a project and then share it with the whole chapter. And they can see how it runs. As simple as it is, it's a change in paradigm. And that throws a lot of people, right?
We have another question here. A really good one. So where do we start? What changes do you suggest that we make in our functions to get to that level that surpasses AI?
Okay. Number one, AI can't be the speed of AI. They have to take roles, right? So they have to, like, for example, for some of you in your areas, you'll see that they actually outsource the FM maybe to someone who didn't have an FM background. And so those people now are telling the professional FM or telling the vendor what to do, right? So in a way, they haven't even waited for the automation of the approach. They just have like said, we can't wait. We're going to do this. It cuts our costs. It makes the client happy, et cetera, et cetera. So how can you overcome the speed of the AI? Simple. It takes time to develop these things. It's to run a test project. Like, for example, as many times as I tell people, stop thinking, don't make decisions. When we sit everybody down at the table, we give them the submittals from the vendors. Immediately, somebody's thinking and making decisions. I mean, I had to tell one client, you know, we can tape your mouth and we can rope you up and put a blindfold on you. And when it's all over, we'll take all the controls off. Right? And then you'll know what it means to not think, not see, not do anything, and the result is given to you. It is that amazing, right? The FM professional can actually do this if they would just relax, and if they have questions, we can answer their questions. But we've done this over 2,000 times. And every time it turns out the same way. It's truly amazing. And I think it's going to be automated if we're not successful in getting the FM professional involved in it. But the real problem is with the FM vendor, because the FM vendor doesn't realize that there's a difference between some of their people and other people. And so they're using them in the same role. And so if you had an expert in your company, you should quickly understand who they are, right? Just by their visionary, they see things from beginning to end, and they make everything so simple. If the vendor isn't using that guy as an expert, but using him like they're using everybody else in the company, or they promote this expert so that he can't utilize his expertise, I mean, they're not going to be using their resources wisely. Does that make sense? It actually comes down to the vendor understanding. In my company, if somebody wanted, quote, me to come in as an expert, who should I send? Why? And how should I use him? For example, if you have an expert, do you use him in the beginning of the project or at the end of the project? Well, it should be in the beginning. Once the expert has laid it out and the expert knows exactly what's going on at that location, should you keep the expert with that project, or should you take the expert out of that project, put other people in who maybe don't have that long-term vision, but who can follow like every week and every month? And when they have a question, then we go back to the expert. Well, these ideas are, for some reason, not taught. They're not utilized. And really, the vendors have as much to do with utilizing their expertise properly and documenting the results of their, quote, expertise as the clients have in changing the way they do things, which is the professional FM.
Okay, I got a couple questions that are somewhat related here, but I love the way this one person put it. Is, how does one overcome C-suite know-it-alls?
Okay, you may not like this answer. Okay, now, let me use an example, right, that I use in teaching all the time. If this guy's an expert, do I need to educate him more or less? What's the answer, guys? Anybody on the chat box? Do I educate this person more? Less.
You need bigger ears than a
Now,
mouth.
let's turn this around. If I try to educate someone and I find out that I have to educate them more, what do I do? Do you think I'll be successful by doing more of this? No. What I have to do is make it more simple. So when I have a know-it-all, quote, C-suite person, I'm not making it simple enough. Because if it was simple enough, they could understand it. They're not trying to give anybody a hard time. They're just trying to figure it out. And all they're interested in is lower costs, higher performance. So the FM professionals have, in my opinion, dropped the ball because they think it's whose fault? The other guy's fault. They don't realize that it's their fault because they haven't made it what? Simple enough. So how do we get through the C-suite? By making it more simple. And we have all kinds of examples, all right? Just a short training session would really help people. But once again, I stop banging my head against the wall. When it's the right time, people will come and ask. If they're not coming and asking yet, I need to just relax and enjoy life. Because that means they can't understand. Okay. Any more questions?
There's a couple more here. Well, this one here I'm going to answer for you since I know the answer to this one. Will ASU beat UCLA this weekend? Well, that's an obvious UCLA is going to win.
I agree with you. I saw the ASU basketball team. Okay.
Okay. So this one is kind of related, I think, to some other things you were talking about, the vendor situation. So what approach does a vendor use to effectively get the FM's attention?
They have to use dominant information. They have to show that they can do something that the other people can't do. So they have to be able to tell the difference. And if I ever, as a vendor, sent somebody in to talk to a client, would I send my expert in or my marketing person? Good question, right? Yes. You know, this takes a different look, right? Because we know what the clients are trying to do. The clients are trying to cut the costs. The clients are trying to get better performance. And they don't want any risk. Human beings are very predictable.
So what's the answer to that question? Would you send you a marketing guy or the
Oh! I would send the guy who can make it simple, which is the expert. If the marketing person is the expert, and in many cases it may be, that's who I would send. But they have to make it simple. When they're talking to the other side, and the other side is, well, we have to compete this, then all you have to do is get on the list. Because you can't change that guy. Right? That guy's already thinking low bid. He's already thinking he's the expert. It becomes very tough. But we're willing to work with anybody in the chapter. So if it's a client, and we just got one, and it's going to turn out the same way it always does, spectacular, or we'll work with the vendor. If a vendor's competing for a job, we will teach the vendor how to win the job using performance information, making it simple. Whichever way. Hey, well, guys, have I used enough of your time?
We still have a couple more questions.
Okay, let them roll.
Okay, so it sounds like this question was answered because it's that less is more, keeping it simple. But the question right here: what is the best way to share expertise and knowledge in an organization?
Okay, this is an answer that you'll have to think about for a while. The expert cannot pass his expertise to a non-expert. This is something that for years people thought could be done. Can't be done. My simplest explanation is, if you're married and you've been married for 20 years, and your spouse comes to you at the end of the 20 years and says, honey, we need to talk about this. As the spouse who's being asked to talk about this, should you talk more or less? What's the answer here? Absolutely. Your spouse is not coming to you saying, I have a problem and I'm going to lay it out for you. And after you listen to me, I want your technical solution to this and I want to do that solution. No. People just want to be heard. They do not learn very well. It's hard to pass this type of expertise on. It's easier to pass technical expertise, because you can do training and education with details. And technical expertise is easier to pass. Now, a vendor, do they have more technical expertise or the type of expertise I'm talking about, where they can see a project from beginning to end, where they can quote, tell the difference, and tell you what they're going to get and make it simple? Which expertise do we have? Technical expertise or this type of expertise? Have I lost everybody?
They're still here, but I don't think that they know that they can respond, or they're muted.
Oh, they're muted. Okay. Anyway, I mean, this was a very active session. So if you have any questions, any more questions, if you send them in to Joe, Joe will answer all of them. And if you all want the exact process on how to do this, we actually have a presentation just on that. So you can get back to Joe and maybe we can meet again. But I totally enjoyed it. So thank you so much for spending your time and your efforts. And thank you so much to all the sponsors.
Dr. Kashiwagi, thank you for your time this afternoon. You got the whole clan involved with this, so we appreciate it. We're going to invite all of you. We're going to switch out of presentation mode and go back to networking mode now. And so I invite you all to stick around. We've got some folks still in the room, so feel free to schmooze, bounce between tables. You can see people's names if you hover over their icon around the table. And then don't forget, we do have our 5 sponsors. They've got their own rooms. And so if we have one of their representatives that are online, we invite you to pop into their breakout area and just say thanks and show your appreciation. So thank you, folks. And Joseph, I'm going to